American Vampire Volume 3, Part 1, Ghost War, covering issues 12 through 18, written by Scott Snyder, art by Rafael, Albuquerque. Alright, Volume 3, this volume covers the 1940s, World War II, and it's a very long volume. I'm actually going to be splitting Volume 3 into two videos. So this video is going to cover the Japanese front of the war in the Ghost War story arc. And then the next video is going to cover the Survival of the Fittest story arc, which is going to focus on the Germans and the Nazis. So, World War II, vampires, that's a great combination. It's going to be a really fun storyline. This Ghost War story arc, it's going to cover Henry and Pearl. We're going to check back in on them. Last we saw them in Volume 2, they were living in California. They ran into some vampires in this jazz club, and they decided to leave California. So now we're going to see where their life is at and how they get sucked into World War II events. So that's going to be a good time. Let's dive into Volume 3, Part 1, Ghost War. Issue 12, Strange Frontier. Before we get to the 1940s World War II stuff, there is Strange Frontier. This one-shot issue takes place in 1919, so timeline-wise, this is 6 years before Skinner Sweet crossed paths with Pearl in Volume 1. So it's 1919. Skinner Sweet comes across a Wild West show featuring his life story and his interactions with some of his old pals and enemies from his outlaw days. Skinner, he's watching the show go on and he's not happy. He sees they have an actor playing James Book and another one playing himself and playing his old friends. Everything is just all wrong and inaccurate. The show, it breaks for an intermission. The announcer says that there's going to be a panel of living legends of the Old West. So old Wild West figures that are still alive, well, this is sort of like their Comic-Con, where regular Joes can pay to see them and get autographs and whatnot. And there are various historical figures here. One of the people the announcer says is there is a Miss Kitty Banks. Miss Kitty Banks was a brothel worker, the lover of many outlaws, and most notably, an old lover of Skinner Sweet. Skinner sees this Kitty Banks from a distance and he feels sad for her. This woman used to be his girlfriend and she had dreams of dying young. How did she end up here in this traveling wax museum of old-timers? Skinner, he's had enough of this old Wild West show. He begins to leave. He doesn't need to see more of this pathetic interpretation of his life. But then the announcer talking about kitty ads, she was the only woman to get close to Skinner Sweet's cold black heart until the fateful night she had a change of tune and turned Skinner Sweet in. Now this is new info to Skinner. She turned him in, his old girlfriend? Skinner, he decides to stick around. He thinks to himself, these people want the West brought back to life so bad, why not give them what they paid for? Skinner, he goes back into the dressing room of the actor who's playing him in the play, and Skinner kills him. Skinner then joins the performance after the intermission, playing the role of himself. The performance is about to start. The scene is a recreation of the shootout at Sidewinder, the one where Skinner Sweet was captured by the heroic James Book. Skinner, he walks out, and the actor playing James Book points his gun at Skinner and tells him, "Stand and fight like a man." Skinner, he jumps on the man and kills him, and he tells the actor, "You don't deserve to wear Jim Book's name." Skinner then announces to the other Old West celebrities and actors that he has replaced the blanks in their guns with real bullets, live ammo, and today the West comes back to life. How about we walk the walk, boys? Time to stop playing cowboys and Indians and belly up to the bar. The owner, he yells at the other Wild West celebrities and actors to not even think about it. You can't. Without me, without the show, you're all just a bunch of nobodies, a bunch of dusty old forgotten. Those old Wild West figures, They had enough of that guy's attitude, and they shoot their boss dead. Skinner says to them, "Now that wasn't so hard, was it?" Skinner, after successfully causing some anarchy, he goes back to visit his old girlfriend, Kitty. When he sees Kitty, she is surprised to see Skinner alive, and she asks if she's dreaming. Skinner tells her, "Sure, Kitty, you're dreaming." Kitty has just taken some drugs to numb herself, and she is a little out of it. Skinner asks her if it's true. Did she turn him in? And Kitty answers, "Of course I did, baby. I love you." Skinner, he's angry, and Kitty explains that she wanted to give Skinner the right ending to his story. The ending he always wanted, going out shooting in a blaze of glory. But James' book wasn't ever gonna let Skinner shoot it out with him. She says, "He wasn't gonna give you that. You couldn't see it, but I did. He was gonna catch you and hang you in front of a crowd of nobodies. He was gonna make a point of you, baby. It made me sick just thinking about it. You deserved better." So, Kitty, back in the day, she called up Camilo, who was James' book's colleague, and she figured that this Camilo, he would come with his men and attack Skinner, and Skinner, along with the rest of his gang and Kitty, would all shoot out and go down together against Camilo. But instead, what ended up happening is that James' book was closer than she expected, and James' book came along and he took Skinner away, and she was left alone. Sadly, she says, "Why'd you let this happen to me, baby? Why'd you let me get old?" Skinner replies, "What if I told you I could turn things back, make you young again, forever?" And Kitty says, "That's sweet, baby, but being young again, that don't matter to me now that the world we belong to is gone." Skinner says, "Except for us." And Kitty replies, "Except for you, baby. It was always in you. The West, it's wherever you go." And Skinner replies, "I'm gonna miss you, Kitty." And then he walked onward, and he eventually made his way to California, where we would see him have his interactions with Pearl in Volume 1 and turn her into another American vampire. Issue 13, Ghost War, Part 1 of 6. The year is now 1943. The world is at war. America at this point is fighting both Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. Pearl and Henry have moved to Honolulu, Hawaii. They tried to live a quiet life, but with war waging all around them, they felt they could no longer live in the shadows. And Henry, he wanted to enlist in the war effort. He wanted to help defend his country. Henry, though, at this point was too old. Because of his age and his prior injuries, he was given a non-combat clerical job. He thought he was happy that he could stay here with Pearl, but part of him resented it. It depressed him. He resented being old and not being allowed to fight, and he wanted to fight. But he ended up spiraling a bit instead and kind of got lost, and he ended up fighting some of his fellow soldiers over something stupid they said to each other. And the younger soldiers easily beat up Henry, so things were just not going great for him. One day, Henry was visited by Lyndon Hobbs. Lyndon Hobbs is the leader of the Vassals of the Morning Star. Henry met Lyndon last volume when the Vassals were trying to get information on the secret weakness for the American vampires out of Pearl and Henry ended up cutting a deal, and he told them the weakness to the American vampires was gold, and in exchange, him and Pearl would be protected and be left alone. Although, because Henry insisted on enlisting in the war effort, Lyndon tells Henry that was kind of a stupid thing for him to do. Enlistments are a matter of public record. Now anyone looking for him and Pearl with a grudge can find them and their personal info, right down to their home address. Lyndon says the Vassals of the Morning Star can hide that info once again. They have ties in the government. But Lyndon feels the need to chastise Henry a little bit over this. But that's not why Lyndon is here. Lyndon Hobbs is here because he has a proposition for Henry. He invites Henry to meet him for drinks, and Lyndon explains what he wants with Henry. He says that there is a volcanic island off the coast of Imperial Japan called Taipan, a tiny island, less than 12 square miles of black rock and jungle. Well, the vassals of the Morning Star suspect that the island is a point of a vampire infestation. It is home to a nest of some kind. Lyndon wants Henry to join their small platoon and check out the island. The team members of the platoon are sitting at a table behind Lyndon. Each member of the team has previous military combat experience as well as experience battling against vampires, just like Henry. Lyndon tells Henry that US forces are preparing a full-scale attack on Taipan, but the men at the table, along with Henry if he joins, will join that invasion force, but then break off into a small covert team to investigate the vampire nest and protect US forces from the indigenous vampires on the island. Henry asks, why him? And Lyndon answers, right now, Henry, you're a liability to me, stumbling around, looking for someone to fight. So, I've come to give you what you want, the chance to fight evil. Henry, he rejects the offer for now. Lyndon tells him that they ship out in 4 days if Henry changes his mind. Henry, he tried to ignore Lyndon Hobbs' offer. He tried to put it behind him and just be content with his life here with Pearl. But he wanted to fight. So he tells Pearl that the government wants him to go overseas and run shortwaves. It's not hard, you just sort of stand back until the area is clear and then head in. Henry says that he told the government no, though. Henry, though, he is lying a bit here. He is telling Pearl that this is just sort of a regular army mission. He's not telling her that this is actually a mission with the vassals of the Morning Star and involves vampires. Regardless though, Pearl, she knows that Henry wants to fight, and she perceived that Henry hasn't been himself lately and that he kind of needs this. He needs this fight. So she's willing to let him go. Now she has a vial of blood in a necklace around her neck, and she gives it to Henry. And she tells him to keep it just in case, and drink it if he is ever in real trouble. She makes Henry promise him. And one way or another, she says she wants Henry to come back to her. And they kiss. A few days later, Henry meets up with Lyndon Hobbs, and they are getting ready to ship out to Taipan. Lyndon introduces Henry to the rest of their squad. There will be 5 of them, including Henry. So, there is Captain Jan Miro, nicknamed the Vicar. He is the leader of their group and a senior member of the Vassals of the Morning Star from Romania. There is John Tickman, only 21 years old. He is the communications and tech man. There is Calvin Poole, 27 years old, first sergeant, taxonomist and vampire expert. There is Sam Lance, 32 years old, weapons expert, former cop from San Francisco's Chinatown district. So, they all board the ship. Captain Jan Miro resents that Henry was late arriving this morning and asks him if this is his first mission with the Vassals of the Morning Star. And this, of course, is Henry's first mission, but he tells the man, "I'm rank sergeant and I've done my share of fighting." The captain replies to Henry, "Not under me, you haven't. That makes you Private Preston for now." So, Henry's new captain is not that impressed with Henry to begin with right now. Jumping back over to Pearl. Now, she's working as a nurse right now, and she received a letter. And in that letter, it's addressed to my girl Pearl on it. And inside, the letter reads, "Check room 4B at the Grand Hawaiian Hotel. Your man is lying to you, Dolly. Don't worry though, I'm about to punish him good enough for both of us. Love always, Skinner Sweet." So Skinner Sweet somehow knows that Henry's been lying to Pearl and that Henry's been sent on this mission with the vassals of the Morning Star. We see back aboard the boat that Henry is on, Skinner Sweet is there as well in some military clothes. He has snuck aboard the ship. He introduces himself to Henry under the fake name of Bill Pike. Henry, he has no idea who Skinner Sweet is, as he's never seen what Skinner looks like. Issue 14, Ghost War Part 2. Henry and his platoon have arrived at the Taipan Island. They storm the beach with the other soldiers, and then they break off. Skinner Sweet, he has himself some fun and kills some of the enemy soldiers, shooting at them as well as tearing them apart in his vampire form. Skinner, he is planning to follow Henry and his platoon along, though, for now. Back in Hawaii, Pearl confronts Lyndon Hobbs. Armed with Skinner's letter he sent her, she confronts Hobbs about him sending Henry on a secret mission involving vampires, and Pearl is worried that now Skinner has infiltrated their group and he might kill them all. Hobbs, he comes clean on what the mission is. Hobbs doesn't think that Skinner would travel all the way across the ocean into a war zone just to get revenge on Henry for revealing the American vampire's species' weakness. He's far too selfish for that. Skinner, he must be playing an angle of some sort. Pearl says to get her there. It's the only way that she can save Henry and the rest of Hobbs's men from the danger of Skinner Sweet. Back to Taipan. Henry and his platoon have split off away from the main US invasion force. They are now searching for the whereabouts of the supposed vampire nest that they are here to eliminate on the island. As they are walking, they see a tunnel. They don't know if it's a nest or not, but the captain, he throws a grenade in the tunnel just in case. It explodes. He tells his men that they need to keep moving if they're going to reach the nearby village by nightfall. Henry and the captain argue. Henry says he would have liked a little bit more warning if the captain was going to be throwing around grenades. And the captain tells Henry, well, maybe you should be quicker on your toes. Henry, he's talking to other soldier, Calvin Poole. And Calvin tells Henry that that's just the captain's way. He's a little gruff around the edges. To him, he sees you as a liability. All us ghosts are. And Henry asks, what are you talking about, ghost? Who's a ghost? And Calvin explains how the 5 of them are all considered ghosts. They have no attachments to the land of the living anymore. In order to join this group, you have to die. Your human life, the paper version of it, disappears. Henry says that Hobbs, he's covering up his records now and his wife Pearl's. But Calvin continues, you're not hearing me, Henry. It's not about hiding you and your girl. When you join, you really join. You sign on that dotted line and all that. And to the world at large, Henry Preston will die. He will never visit his family. He'll never visit his friends. He'll never play another gig. No phone calls to mom, no postcards, nothing. To be a real soldier in this war, you've got to have nothing on that side. The captain, John, Sam, me, we're full vassals of the Morning Star. Dead and buried. Because believe me, if you join the fight, really join, and you've got someone you love out there, family, friends, the vamps will find them and kill them. Henry asks Calvin, and that's what you did? You gave it all up? And Calvin answers, no. It was taken from me by vampires. My wife, my whole life. I was a high school science teacher, if you can believe that. Vampires take what you have, and after that, well, it's an easy choice. But enough about us. What about you, Sergeant Preston? How'd vampires come into your life? And Henry answers, I'm married to one. And to this, Calvin is shocked and says, come again? All of a sudden, they see some sort of movement out there in the brush. And it is Skinner Sweet. He is just pretending to be another normal soldier like the rest of them. He says he was part of the overall invasion force, but he got separated from the rest of his men when the Japs started attacking them. Henry, he vouches for Skinner because he says that he met him on the boat on the way over, and that the man's name is Bill Pike. Skinner, he's pretending to be a little bit injured here, and he joins the rest of Henry and his platoon, and Henry is helping Skinner along. Now Henry's platoon, along with Skinner, finally arrive at the village that they were looking for. It looks abandoned. They continue walking through the village. They think that it's all clear, so they're gonna set up shop in one of the empty houses. But at that moment, one of these mysterious taipan vampires on this island strikes from above from a nearby tree, and it grabs soldier John Tickman, and it shoves its claws right through his head, killing him. Henry and his platoon start opening fire. Calvin Poole, who is the vampire expert in the group, says he's never seen this species of vampire before. The group comes to the realization that the whole town is infected, and we see many of these odd-looking, bestial taipan vampires jumping from up above. Issue 15, Ghost War, Part 3. So these taipan vampires are overwhelming Henry and his men. Henry and his platoon were continuing laying down fire and retreating and running. Skinner, sweet, he decides to fight some of these taipan vampires. He is confident. He yells at them, "Come on, you pussies, come to daddy, sweet." Skinner, he gets slashed by one of these taipan vampires, and Skinner is surprised. These vampires actually hurt him. Something about their physiology doesn't gel with him. He feels a little weak and sick. And Skinner, he rejoins Henry and the others, and Henry actually has to help Skinner along as they are running away. So as they are running, they notice that John Tickman, their fellow soldier that got killed by the taipan vampires last issue, well, he has already been turned and transformed into another one of these weird new taipan vampires. Calvin Poole, the vampire expert, can't believe how fast John transformed. Most species of vampire don't transform from human to vampire as quick as this. They all continue running. Eventually, they find themselves in a small hut, and they see a secret door in the floor that opens, and a human woman yells for them to join them quickly. Henry and the others all run to that door in the floor, and they get in it, and then they shut the door behind them, just in the nick of time, as the taipan vampires swarm up above them. Back in Hawaii, Lyndon Hobbs, he's seeing Pearl off, and he is sending her to Taipan to assist. Her cover is that she will be doing nurse work for the soldiers over there. But of course, she will secretly break off and look for Henry and the others. He tells her, "If you ask me, what you're doing is quite noble." And Pearl replies, "I didn't ask you." And Hobbs, he laughs. After Pearl leaves in the plane, Hobbs makes a phone call to someone and says that Pearl is on board, right where we want her. So that leaves me to believe that Lyndon Hobbs has been manipulating a little bit of this situation and has been pulling a little bit of a ruse to get Pearl over to Taipan and assist with the vassals of the Morning Star's plans over there. Back in Taipan, Henry and his platoon are in the underground bunker in that infested village. The underground bunker appears to run beneath a whole bunch of the homes in the village. Of Henry's platoon, so far, they are all still alive except for John Tickman. So Henry, Captain Jan Miro, Calvin Poole, Sam Lance, and Skinner Sweet. Now Skinner, he is badly injured though from the Taipan vampires' claw wounds. Captain Miro thinks that they should kill Skinner as he might turn. But Calvin and Sam say that John, he turned instantly when he was bitten. So this man would have turned already if he was going to. Calvin suspects that the taipan vampire species, or whatever it is, it infects its victims from its bite. Clawing at someone is not enough. But get bit? and you'll turn into one of them in a matter of minutes. Henry asks why John Tickman, when he got turned into a vampire, why it seemed like he was so bestial, like there was nothing left of him in that thing. It was him, but it wasn't. Calvin, the vampire expert, explains that different bloodlines infect in different ways. Certain lines, most of the European ones, like the classic Carpathian, they destroy parts of the host's personality, but they leave other parts intact. Most bloodlines leave you a predatory, cold version of yourself. So this is a very important thing to establish here. So let's go over it once again. Certain vampire species bloodlines affect the personality different. These Taipan vampires, they make the victim a complete raging, feral, monstrous zombie, whereas the European Carpathian vampires are still who they were when they were human. They still maintain that personality, but they are a more predatory, cold, evil version of themselves. So that is why all the Carpathian vampires we've met so far within this series have all pretty much been evil bastards, whereas the American vampires, like Pearl, their personalities seems to be relatively the same as they were when they were human, so it's still relatively intact. Now Sam, Lance, has been talking to the other villagers down here in the bunker, and he explains to the rest of his platoon that apparently these vampires, or how the villagers refer to them as, these spirits, they have been living here on the island for nearly 500 years, since the first European expeditions. All the villagers used to live at balance here with the spirits, generation after generation, until last year, when the Japanese army came and disrupted things. The villagers explain that the Japanese built a, quote, bad place on the island further down the coast about 1.5 miles from here, hidden in the northern rock face. And Henry asks what kind of bad place did they build? And Sam says that none of the villagers know exactly, maybe a prison camp of some kind, but they say if you get taken there to this bad place, you never come back. So Henry and his platoon, they sleep for the night, and in the morning, they climb up the ladder out of the hidden door in the ground, and they are going to search for this bad place. However, as soon as they pop their head above the ground, the Japanese army is there to greet them, and they fire on Henry and his people with tranquilizer guns. Before passing out, Henry asks the Japanese soldier, "Tranquilizers? You might as well kill us, you son of a bitch. None of us are gonna tell you anything." The Japanese soldier replies, "Kill you? My American friend, what a waste that would be." The Japanese knocks Henry and the rest of his men out, and they drag them out of the hole. They then toss a grenade down the hole, killing any remaining villagers. The Japanese soldiers then drag Henry and the rest of his platoon to a mysterious-looking building, the so-called Bad Place. Issue 16, Ghost War, Part 4. Henry, when he finally wakes up from the tranquilizer shot, he is in a building, the Bad Place, that looks a lot like an old prison camp. Apparently this place was called Unit 732. There was a strange pit at the center of the facility. The Japanese brought Henry and his men here 5 days ago and drugged them up to the gills, and when Henry and the others woke up, they were stripped of all their weapons, belongings, and anything they could use to escape. They were given the crusts of moldy bread and a couple drops of dirty water to survive. Henry assumed they were all going to be tortured soon. One morning, the Japanese finally came for Sam Lance. They dragged Sam to the mouth of the pit and tossed him in. Sam, in the bottom of the pit, saw some kind of bomb there. The bomb explodes, and some of the shrapnel from the bomb, it went into Sam and infected him. Sam, looking at the shrapnel in him, says, "Oh no, guys, it's been an honor. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." And then he transforms into one of the bestial Taipan vampires himself. The Japanese up above shine huge lights onto Sam, and Sam, as a vampire now, runs and scurries away into the shadows. The Japanese soldiers and scientists up above overlooking the pit shake hands. So the Japanese and the scientist here have created some kind of bomb weapon that when it goes off will turn someone into one of these bestial taipan vampires. And they've just tested it on this Sam, and it seemed to have successfully worked. Henry, he sees this all go down, and he comes to the conclusion that he and his platoon weren't brought here for information. They were brought here to be experimented on. Elsewhere on the Taipan Island, Pearl has arrived, finally, undercover as a nurse. She has slipped away from the other nurses and has headed into the jungle, and she is now looking for Henry and the rest of Henry's platoon. Back over to Henry in the prison camp. Henry and the rest of his soldiers are in different adjacent cells, and they're talking about poor Sam. And Henry announces that he thinks he knows a way out of this situation. The captain asks him, "Do you have a weapon or something we can use against them?" And Henry says, "Yes." Him, gesturing towards Skinner Suite. Henry tells his platoon that man, he's a vampire. Skinner, he denies it and tells Henry those are wild accusations to be thrown around. But Henry, he has figured everything out. He says that man is Skinner Suite. I had my suspicions since the boat ride over, but it was here in this place that I knew for sure. His heart, it only beats once a minute. I was watching his pulse while he slept. Skinner, realizing that the jig is up, tells Henry, "Well, aren't you an observant one?" And Henry explains, "I've slept next to an American vampire named Pearl Jones every night for nearly 20 years. Your pulse is just like hers." Skinner, who seems to have feelings for Pearl and wishes Pearl reciprocated them a bit, tells Henry, "See, that's just low. Rubbing it in like that, you and her, I'll have to hurt you a little extra now." Henry replies to Skinner, "Bold words for someone who's dying. These vampires on this island can hurt you same as us. You are practically torn to pieces in there. You've lost too much blood. I doubt you could change much if you wanted to. It's only gonna get worse, Skinner. Deny it all you want, but any minute you'll collapse from blood loss, and your body will go into shock and then hibernate. For all intents and purposes, you'll die." Now, I don't know why you're here or what you're after. My guess is you were closing in on me back in Hawaii when you caught wind of this mission and, not knowing the objective, decided, hell, why not tag along? You'd get to kill me, and as a bonus, maybe get your hands on something valuable to the vassals of the Morning Star, your sworn enemies? Like I said, I don't know. And the truth is, I don't care. Bottom line, I know all too well what happens to people who make deals with you. It's why I haven't called you out until now." And Skinner replies to this, "You know me so well, Hank, then why why talk deals at all?" And Henry says, "Because, like I said before, the vampires on this island, they can hurt you, sweet, kill you. You need us to get out of here, same as we need you. We're in it together, at least until we reach safe ground. Then you and me, we can have it out." Henry offers Skinner some of his blood in his arm to heal Skinner. Calvin tells Henry that Skinner might just bleed him dry, he should be careful. And Henry answers he could, but he won't. He wants to get out of this hellhole just as bad as we do. I'll give him my blood and he'll get some strength back, and then we'll get out of here together. Deal? And Skinner replies, "Deal, Chief." Henry offers his arm to Skinner through the bars, and Skinner drinks some blood from Henry's arm and regains some of his strength. We see elsewhere in the facility, the Japanese soldier is talking to the scientist. They are discussing the test results that they've been running in this facility, turning people into these vampires. The soldier, he says he wants no more tests. He feels that the weapon that they've been making, it works, and he wants to move it tonight and load it with the newest batch of plasma. He says the Americans have almost taken over the whole south of the island, and that they have to move fast. The Japanese soldier and the scientist, they hear some crash and clanking noises nearby. They run around a corner and see that Skinner Sweet, now in his vampire form, along with Henry, Captain Miro, and Calvin Poole, have escaped from their cells, and they are now here to confront them. Issue 17, Ghost War, Part 5. Skinner is killing these Japanese soldiers, and Henry and the captain and Calvin are following behind. The captain tells Henry that the American vampire's bite has a paralytic to it, and it makes it hard to move, and he can help Henry move along if he wants. But Henry says it's okay. He's built up an immunity to the bite over the years. His wife, an American vampire, would sometimes feed on him. But this is something new that we didn't know about the American vampire species, that their bite temporarily paralyzes someone. So this is something to keep in mind for future volumes. Skinner, Henry, and the others continue their way through the facility. They see the Japanese have created some sort of major blood bomb, the same kind that they used on Sam earlier. The Japanese are planning to infect all of their enemies in the war with these bombs. Captain Miro, coming to the realization of the Japanese plan, says, the evil that they would unleash upon the earth with this? Henry says it's a Hail Mary, a doomsday bomb. That's why they're fighting so hard to protect this island. If they drop even one of these things, they could infect thousands, maybe even millions of people. Captain Miro, realizing how dangerous this bomb is, he calls in an airstrike on the area. They need to destroy this facility and any of the weapons, these blood bombs that they have created inside of it. The captain, then talking to Henry, Calvin, and Skinner, he recognizes that they might not have enough time to get out of this facility before the bomb hits, but he tells them, if we die, we die. He doesn't want this poison to spread all over the world. The captain says they probably have about 15 minutes to get out of here before the planes probably reach them. So they need to get out of here now. They all begin running through some more of the tunnels in the facility. They are fighting through some more of these Taipan vampires. Skinner, he stops to shoot at some more of them and he yells, "You want a snack? Eat this!" Henry yells for Skinner to come now. The airstrike will be here any minute. Skinner doesn't make it though. The airstrike launched its bombs, and Henry, the captain, and Calvin managed to make it out of the blast radius in time, but Skinner Sweet seems to have been caught up in all the explosions. Henry, the captain, and Calvin continue running, some remaining Taipan vampires still rushing after them. They are all still in the tunnels, pushing onwards, and they hit a dead end in the tunnels. And the captain, he asks for the last of Henry and Calvin's grenades. The captain reveals that he was bitten, and he doesn't have much time before he turns himself. He tied a knot around his arm to slow the change, but it won't be long now. So the captain, he has given Henry and Calvin's grenades, and he begins running towards the Taipan vampires, and he starts to transform, and then the grenades explode all around him, and he takes a whole bunch of the Taipan vampires out with him. And he causes some real destruction to the tunnel walls. Henry and Calvin, they appear okay and alive, but they are now trapped under some rubble from the most recent explosion. They are down there for a while in the rubble, wondering if they are ever gonna make it out of there. Eventually, though, Skinner Sweet, he reaches through the rubble from up above and grabs Henry and pulls Henry up to the surface. Skinner, he managed to survive the airstrike, exploding all around him, although he does appear to have some bad burns now. And Skinner says, "Howdy, Hank." You never heard the saying, no man gets left behind? And Henry says, I thought you were dead. And Skinner continues, you thought I'd actually meet my end like that? Killed by a bunch of Jap vampires on some godforsaken yellow rock? You don't know me at all, do you, Hank? But I know you, and I know that now that we've made it out of there, you've outlived your usefulness to me, which means I finally get to kill you. Hell, I can even take my time, spoil myself a little. Skinner, he is going to finally end Henry and kill him, but not so fast. Pearl has finally managed to catch up to them all, and she's standing right behind them and says, let him go, Skinner. This is between you and me. Issue 18, Ghost War, Part 6 of 6. Pearl and Skinner begin to fight. They are both trying to claw at each other. Henry, he gets up and jumps on Skinner and shoots him point blank in the head. It's just a regular bullet though, not a gold one. Skinner, he quickly regains his composure and lunges at Henry and takes a bite out of Henry's neck. Pearl charges at Skinner and tackles him. Skinner tells Pearl, tell me something, Dolly. Why oh why have you wasted yourself on old Hank here for so long? And Pearl replies, maybe because he's everything you're not. And Skinner to this says, ouch. Funny though, because lately, to me at least, your man has seemed a little short of saintly. I mean, he lied to you about joining up, am I right? He lied about the nature of his mission. And if he's lying about all that, who's to say he hasn't been lying about loving you all these years? Both of them swipe at each other and grapple some more, and Skinner keeps talking to Pearl. He tells her, you remember what I told you the first time we met by the pool of the ladies' boarding house? I told you you had spunk. That's why I picked you, see? Because deep down beneath your little housewife act, you're a bad girl, aren't you? A bad girl, and all you needed was someone to bring it out of you. That's what I'm here to do. Always. So Skinner and Pearl are grappling and struggling, and Skinner, he kisses Pearl, and Pearl kind of backs away. And Skinner says, all the fun we're gonna have together, you and me? We were made for each other, it's true, and you know it is. And Pearl to this says, maybe it is true, but I guess we'll never know. She pulls out a gold dagger, which Skinner is weak to gold, and she stabs Skinner right in his chest, and it hurts Skinner, and he grabs his chest and falls down, and he is clutching to life. And he tells her, ain't that just like you to bring a knife to a fang fight? And he asks her, gold, I take it? And Pearl says, gold. And Skinner replies, that's my girl. And Pearl tells him, no, not anymore. Pearl, she walks away from Skinner, presuming him to be dead. Pearl heads over to Henry and helps him up. Henry sees his fellow soldier Calvin Poole reaching his hand up through the rubble. Henry pulls up Calvin, and together, Pearl, Henry, and Calvin run, leaving Skinner Sweet behind. They jump off a nearby cliff into the ocean just in time as another airstrike bomb drops from above and explodes around them. Pearl, Henry, and Calvin land in the water. They swim to the surface of the ocean there, and some of those taipan vampires are in the water as well though. Those vampires, they're trying to swim up to the surface and get them, but because the sun is still up, it's too bright for the taipan vampires to get to the surface. For now, they're gonna have to stay down below where it's deeper and darker. So Pearl, Henry, and Calvin are safe for now, at least until the sun goes down. Pearl, Henry, and Calvin, they're treading water, figuring they only have a little while before the sun sets on them. But they manage to see an American helicopter up above, and they call for help, and the helicopter manages to spot them. The helicopter hovers above them and drops a ladder for them to climb up, and the three of them manage to escape just in time. And the helicopter flies away, and the three of them are rescued. They were eventually brought back to Honolulu to heal up, and after some time passes, Pearl tells Henry what ended up happening, that the US military blew up the whole damn island. Not just bombed it, they obliterated it, apparently with a new kind of doomsday bomb. Pearl must be referring to the atomic bomb, the very kinds of bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima in World War II. Pearl and Henry, they talk through their issues. Henry, he apologizes to Pearl for not being fully truthful with her and keeping secrets from her. Pearl, she doesn't really care that much. She says we all have secrets. She just tells Henry to be honest with her when she asks, "Do you love me?" And Henry says that he does, and Pearl replies, "That's all I need to know." And the two of them kiss. We see Calvin Poole. He is also healing in a hospital room, and two nurses are looking at the shrapnel that came out of him. It appears that the blood vial necklace that Pearl gave Henry and told him to drink if he ever got into real trouble, well, during all the battling and destruction and explosions and fighting, the vial, it must have smashed, and Pearl's blood in that vial made its way into Calvin. And Calvin, he is lying there in that hospital bed, he is sweating, and then all of a sudden his eyes open, and they are yellow, and it looks like Calvin has just been turned into another American vampire. And that is the end of part 1 of Volume 3, the Ghost War story arc. Alright, so some of my thoughts on the stories we had in this volume. I like the Strange Frontier one-shot. I thought it was fun seeing a younger Skinner Sweet in 1919, seeing him see this Wild West roadshow, showing his life events through these actors and seeing him sort of causing havoc there. And then I thought the conversation he had with his old lover, Kitty Banks, was pretty compelling. And Kitty Banks, she's kind of this sad older woman, and they talk about their history. And I thought all that was pretty well done. Then we had the whole Ghost War story arc, and I liked a lot of it, and there's parts of it I had trouble buying into. So firstly, I just got to talk about Henry and Pearl. I had a little bit of trouble buying into the fact that Henry was this sad sack guy. He's older and he's sad about being older. He's probably pushing maybe 45 years old at this time in the story, I think. And he wants to go fight in the war, and they won't let him because he's too old, and he has some injuries. And I'm just not buying that Henry's so depressed about this. And the series of events we have with Lyndon Hobbs trying to recruit Henry for this Vassals of the Morning Star mission seemed a little bit convoluted. They don't really need Henry. There are probably other, better, more capable people. But for some reason, they recruit Henry. Maybe it was just a roundabout way to draw Pearl into the Vassals of the Morning Star. Maybe that's what was going on. But I just really wasn't buying the setup. But nevertheless, if we move past that, when we just go with it, once we're over there in Japan and Henry's with his platoon and they're in the jungles, it is pretty fun. It is pretty fun. We see them going through these jungles, and it's very scary. And then we see these taipan vampires, and they're sort of these zombie monsters, and they look horrific. And that was all really fun. I also thought it was interesting adding to the lore of the vampires about how the different species, it affects their personality different. So the American vampires, they retain their human personality, whereas the Carpathian vampires become this kind of evil version of their human selves, whereas the Taipan vampires become kind of zombies and they're kind of mindless. So I thought that was something interesting to add. Then in Japan, I thought there was some really cool action scenes, and seeing this kind of prison in the Japanese experimenting, creating these blood bombs. That was a really cool concept. And then seeing Henry and his platoon hooking up with Skinner, fighting their way out of there, and then having Skinner and Pearl fight a bit. All that was really fun. And there's lots of really good stuff in that story arc. One other thing I was thinking about, though, is the fact that Henry really is resistant to being turned into an American vampire. him and Pearl constantly kind of argue a little bit about this. I'm not really seeing much of a downside for Henry being turned into an American vampire. I know the Carpathians, they become evil, so maybe you don't want to turn into them. And they also burn in the sunlight, so you can't even go outside if you're a Carpathian. But the American vampire seems not bad. I mean, you live basically forever, you stay young, you can go out in the sun. Doesn't seem bad to me. You can live forever and be happy with Pearl. But Henry really doesn't want to do it. Anyway, I had a lot of fun with this volume. I thought it was a really good time. My only downsides are that some of that setup stuff of getting Henry over there to Japan, I had some trouble with. But still, I'm going to give this volume a 7.5 out of 10. Thank you all for watching, and I will be back next week with the second half of Volume 3, the Survival of the Fittest story arc.